Happy Friday morning. Today I'm going to be talking about resourcing for anxiety. And I would imagine that most of you have either had personal experience or experience with clients or family members or friends who have had some run-ins with anxiety. And today we're just going to talk about some ways that we can resource ourselves in order to shift our relationship with anxiety. And that's one of the first points that I'm excited to bring up, which is oftentimes culturally we are somewhat at war with anxiety, and we'd like to kill it or be free of it completely. And one of the first shifts that we can make in our relationship with anxiety is to just acknowledge that it's a relationship, to acknowledge that it's actually a feature and not a bug, and to start to understand that it's actually trying to help us. Anxiety is something that is there to protect us from threats. And many of you are probably familiar with negativity bias and the idea that one of the reasons that anxiety is so prominent in our world is because there's a mismatch between the environment that we find ourselves in and the biological hardware that we've been given in order to navigate the world we live in. It used to be the case that there were a lot of threats that we had to contend with, and so anxiety and fear were really vital in protecting us from those threats. And we don't have those types of threats anymore. There aren't bears that were going to attack us or tribes that are going to try and attack us. Ultimately, the things that we're dealing with are small potatoes in comparison to what our ancient ancestors had to contend with. And yet we're still left with this biological imperative to get into fight, flight, and freeze. And so if we can acknowledge that anxiety is here to help us and to shift our perception of anxiety and realize that it's actually trying to help us and we can be in a different relationship to it, that can be one of the first steps in transforming how it affects us. So being curious and open are some of the hallmark characteristics of a mindfulness practice. And we need to bring those same characteristics to anxiety. Rather than trying to expel it from our lives, we need to open to it, turn towards it, get curious, get open, and start to explore other possibilities in our relationship. And I wanted to just kind of go through some of the ways in which a mindfulness practice can help us based on neurophysiological aspects. And this comes, and the exercise that I'll have you try in just a little bit, this comes from someone named Rick Hanson. I know Tiffany's a big fan of Rick Hanson, and I am as well. He's written a number of books. He has a very robust YouTube channel that I encourage you to explore if you are more curious about how you can further your betterment in a general way, and if it's specific to anxiety, that as well. So what are some of the ways that the research shows that mindfulness practices can help us in our relationship with anxiety? Well, we know that the brain is plastic. Neuroplasticity is a known fact at this point. And so the mindfulness practice can help us to alter the neural pathways, and that will change our experience in our relationship to anxiety. Another thing is the prefrontal cortex, which is where our empathy, our decision-making, our self-regulation comes online. Those are all increased as we continue to practice on a daily basis. The practice of being fully present in one's body in here and now is actually another really good way for us to regulate our nervous systems. And anxiety is a function of the nervous system. So that practice is, again, helping us to resource. Practices that we do that involve compassion and self-compassion, which are often a part of mindfulness training and mindfulness practice. those things can really help us to become more resilient to the stresses that often can cause the anxiety that we experience in the world. And another key area of the brain that is often associated with anxiety is the amygdala, the sympathetic nervous system, the fight, flight, and freeze aspect of our experience. And mindfulness is a very good way to downregulate the amygdala. So these are all pretty well established ways that we can start to cope with hyperarousal. And it's not to say that there aren't aspects of anxiety that are genetic. It's not to say that there's not more complexity to this subject. And I am not a psychiatrist, nor do I play one on the internet. But in my own experience working with clients and working with myself, there are some very powerful tools that are at our disposal as we engage a mindfulness practice that can be really effective. Um, so that is my spiel as far as kind of giving you a little bit of a primer on the mindfulness neurobiological take on anxiety. And let's get into the resourcing of, what are the things, what are the practical things that we can do to help ourselves to navigate troubled waters as we get stimulated by one challenge or stimulus or another. So these are all from Rick Hanson, and I'm going to take you through three pretty simple tools that you can utilize in order to regulate yourself and make it through some of those challenges that you might face. So I would encourage you, if it's comfortable for you, to go ahead and close your eyes now and just settle into the physical position that you're in. Feel the support underneath you. And let's start by just acknowledging what's present in this moment. Perhaps there is a little bit of anxiety or worry present for you in this moment. And if that's the case, let's just allow it to be what it is. Notice if there's any specific place in the body where that is noticeable, any sensation that might be showing you that it's present. And if it's not present, then just notice what that's like. If you're feeling relatively carefree, just acknowledging that and noticing, what is that like? Maybe there's a spaciousness. It could be a warmth. Simply acknowledging what's here now. And then the first practice that we'll do as a resource is simply to breathe in for half as much time as we breathe out. And what we're doing is we're sending a message to our nervous systems that everything is okay. There are no threats to be concerned with. So we breathe in on a count of 3, 2, 3, hold. Then we'll breathe out to the count of 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Breathing in to the count of 3, 2, 3. And breathing out to the count of 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. One more time, breathing in, 2, 3. Breathing out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now I would invite you to simply notice any shifts that you've experienced just in the simple act of breathing out for twice as long as you're breathing in. If there's any calm that has developed, any relaxing that has developed, simply noting that to yourself. In this moment, I am feeling calm, and acknowledging that this is a resource that you possess. This is a simple tool that is available to you when you need it. And there may be some worry, there may be a little bit of anxiety on the periphery of your experience, and that's okay. Simply return your focus to the feeling of calm from a simple breath exercise. The second practice we're going to do is to bring care into our system. So I'd like you to just hold in your mind a person or a being, could be a pet, could be a loved one, someone for whom you have uncomplicated love. And just hold that person in your mind, or that pet, or whatever that being is, hold them in your mind and just feel the care and the love that you have, and transmit that to this other being. And then feel that care and love coming back to you. You might sense open-heartedness. You might sense a warmth in and around your heart. Just notice the sensations that occur as you experience this care. And just ground into that. And again, there may be thoughts, there may be worries on the periphery. Just gently return to that sense of care and open-heartedness. And I invite you again to acknowledge that this is a resource that you have. And in this moment, you can experience this open-heartedness. And lastly, we're just going to acknowledge that in this moment, we are relatively fine. We're okay. This can be helpful for people who perhaps suffer from panic attacks or extreme versions of anxiety, just to simply acknowledge that despite everything that may be a challenge or may feel overwhelming, that in this moment, we are breathing, breathing in, breathing out, and we are alive. We are experiencing aliveness. And just to ground into this basic fact that everything is essentially okay in this moment. I am alive. I am breathing. I am a human being on the planet Earth. Just this simple fact Hold this in the center of your consciousness and know that in this moment it is true. So now I'd like to just invite you to slowly open your eyes and return to the space that you're in. It can be helpful just to take in the room or the space where you're sitting. It can also be helpful to wiggle the fingers or the toes and just slowly readjust to normal life, quote unquote. So I really hope that those resourcing tools were useful, and I'm happy to stay and answer any questions. Otherwise, I'm wishing you a lovely Friday and a lovely weekend, and I will see you back here next week.